Good morning. I don't know. Sometimes my brain goes crazy when that music comes on, and I just pictured the Muppets band playing that for some reason.
Like, which Muppet were you?
I wasn't any of them, but I was just looking at like
a
furry creature just whacking away on the drums.
I actually made a Muppet reference last week to one of the kids that came in for. I was like, there was like this plant. And I was like, it kind of looks like Beaker's hair. And they had no idea what I was talking about. I think Muppets are pretty much irrelevant. But hopefully we're still relevant. It's gloomy, but you know what? Who cares? It's a March 3rd, 2026. Welcome, everybody. You're listening to the Crushing Iron Podcast. This is episode 909, Nutrition and Hydration.
Oh, this is good.
Wait, I know, I'm slowing down, but still, honestly, is this the first pre-show meeting outline we've ever had with a podcast number? And I know we're not going to title this probably, but maybe I just did, but that we ever had before we went live.
Oh, I know.
Nine episodes. Nah, maybe
we've had a few outlines.
That's true. We've had a few.
To be honest with you, they do seem to work, but sometimes
it is true, but sometimes I feel like it. Hell, we probably could have talked for 2.5 hours of the topic we had before rolling. I'm not sure that would fall in line with the actually probably would with the triathlon.
Yeah, well,
it probably would resonate more than nutrition and hydration with most people. But no, it's good to be back. Hope everybody had a fantastic weekend. We're in March, and March means races are here. I think Ironman New Zealand kicks off this coming weekend on the Pro Series. I think that's televised. You got Dallas the next weekend, then you got Oceanside. I think even Texas 70.3 sneaks in towards the end of this month. So yeah, it feels like for January and February flew by. But yeah, we're here in March. People got spring break. You got March Madness coming up. Exciting time of year. Plenty of time to hop on the trainer and watch a lot of basketball in the next coming weeks with your conference tournaments. And then March Madness and some pretty good viewing stuff with 70.3s and fulls. And you got Texas. Yeah, we're here. We have arrived. We are on. We are officially in the triathlon season, and I hope the hope for today is we can finish up some of the questions you started out for us last week. I think the nutrition hydration is a pretty big. Listen, we'll dive deep into it in a minute, and yeah, I'll throw in it depends a lot, but I honestly think nutrition and hydration, when you get to a certain point, are almost evenly weighted evenly across a full distance. 70.3 fitness is probably still going to trump. You can kind of make a few mistakes, and the race is short enough, you'll get it over with. And then sprints or Olympics, the fitness way outweighs and trumps nutrition and hydration. But I think when you get to that full distance, I think they're almost weighted evenly, and poor nutrition, hydration can completely erase any kind of fitness that you have, or at least cause a lot of issues. So yeah, I think it's a topic a lot of people think about, probably not till 2 weeks before race day, or they think about it too far in advance, but it's a good topic, and these are pretty good questions.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is a big one of those, it depends, but it's interesting you put it that way because, yeah, certainly a full the nutrition piece and the hydration piece can really kind of run you off the rails or save the day. I think 70.3, but certainly, I just think it's really interesting because I still remember really clearly about when I got into this sport and how I really thought I was doing a sprint, and I was just so worried about my nutrition and everything. And I think it's interesting to think about how even in an Olympics sometimes it's you get to a point when, you need some stuff, but, I just think there's a tendency to over nutrition a lot in this sport.
You're not triathletes, right? They don't overdo it. And anything, they're very undersold, right? It is. I think there's a time and place, and we'll talk about it as we kind of go through the questions, but it is if I even look back through and listen, it's like all things, right? Fashion, politics, training theory, sports that are popular, it all ebbs and flows. Like once, it goes out of style, then it's back in style. Goes out of style and it's back in style. Like if I look back at like what I was using when I first got into the sport, so like 2002, 2003, I was using a product called Accelerate, and I'm not even sure they make it anymore. But I was using Accelerate during all my sessions, like every single one. And then I was using Endurox, which is like a post-workout recovery drink.
Those both sound like pharmaceuticals to me.
Well, it's funny you said, because they're made by Pacific Health Labs.
Okay.
And yeah, but like, I mean, they were super, super old, but like, I guess they do still make it up. I just popped onto their website. But I remember I looked back at like how much I was taking in, like with each one of these items. And like, yeah, I've changed back and forth here and there when it comes to, products, and also like, and then I was, we've talked a lot about EFS, right? Like, from First Endurance, I do think they make like a lot of like really, really good products. But I like looked back and I was like, dear, like the amount of sugar that I was taking in these just a simple single serving of Endurox was mind-boggling to me. It's probably more sugar than I have in like, well, most days I'm gonna have a little bit of ice cream, but like when it talks like post-workout,
bars, man.
Yeah, it is unbelievable the amount. And I was like, and I was doing this like, if I did any workout, I was slamming one. I mean, I was 100% slamming one. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's, it ebbs and flows, I think, with everybody, but then my biggest thing is like, if you find something that works, like stick to it as much as you can, but also be willing to experiment. And I think like, one of the biggest things with nutrition and fueling, you talked about, a lot of people probably overdo it, is I agree. I mean, you can see this like when you go to like 5Ks and 10Ks, like you see people with like a freaking fuel belt, around their waist, and you're about to go. I mean, that used to be me. If I had a 30-minute run, I'm popping a gel, right? I got to have, I got to keep those glycogen scores, like even it's like an easy run, heading to the pool, grab a gel, hop on the bike, grab a gel. And like you've already eaten like it. So it's like, it's crazy to think about like the ends of like the spectrum that we kind of go through sometimes. And again, I think there's a very happy medium for both. And I look back at like the, whatever, like 18-ish miles that I did at run camp. I did on like, I want to say like 20 carbs and like 10 sugars. I mean, and I felt pretty good when I was done. Like, not that that's like, you don't want to race that way, but like, I think training your body, and we'll get in this here in a minute, and we had a lot of podcasts on this the last year and a half, 2 years, is, there's a whole lot of ways, I think, to perform well. It's just what you're the most comfortable with. And then don't feel like you're a high carb person. Don't feel like you're a lower carb person. Find like the right carb amount for yourself. And I honestly don't think that there is a specific, calculation for that for any person. I know there are a lot of different, platforms and programs, even products like, Precision Fuel and Hydration. They have like their own, like they get a Fuel In that does their own thing. Like, I really think you have to experiment to kind of feel like what is right and then what doesn't feel right, or what feels like maybe too much, right? Because they can't tell you like what you're going to have GI stress with. They're not going to tell you how you're going to feel afterwards, right? Like you might, be taking in like an enormous amount of carbohydrates and sugar, but you're always having these like post-workout crashes because your insulin drops so significantly. Like maybe that's not the right, way to have it. Like you don't want it to also drop because you don't have enough. So like really you just need things to be stable. And I do think this is nutrition, and not the hydration necessarily, because I don't think anybody could argue about, the importance of hydration and electrolytes. I think the carbohydrate sugar use is the most polarizing in that area right now. And you might, a lot of people will say, well, like the high carb fueling is the reason you've seen, all these training times, increase or get so much faster over the next couple of years, or the last few years. I think that's true to like some extent, but you have so much like technology and bike fitting and shoes, and I think just like the general overall like speed of the top end like makes people go faster. So I'm also interested to see, like, again, this is like a sidebar, is like how the new 20-meter drafting rule is going to impact times. Are they going to drop some? They're going to go a bit slower because you got to bike more, and then you're going to have to, like, burn your biscuits. But yes, it's a complicated thing. But I before we get started, because a lot of things are going to be, it depends. I can't, tell you enough, like, just practice certain things, practice a few products, and then see what makes you feel good. Not just during the workout, but how do you recover? How do you feel the next day? How do you feel later on the day? Do you feel like you have sustained energy? Are you recovering enough? Like, all these things are very, very important. And I think a lot of people just think about what they take during the workout and not what they take before the workout, what they had the night before. Was it too much? So anyway, I think we'll get into that here, but yes, it's a complicated thing. I think almost more complicated for a lot of people than just training.
Yeah. And I also think I wonder if, just using my example, like if I do Ironman and then I take a week or a month or 2 months off or something, and then I get back into it, my thought is always with nutrition. I do think it's obviously a thing you do have to kind of play around with and experiment with. And I think the earlier you start that experiment, the better. And I also think that it's one of those things where you might want to build, just like training, you kind of want to build up to it. You don't want to just, all right, I'm back in training, and then you're just full bore pouring down carbs and sugars like crazy out of the gate. I think it's one of those things that, it's probably a build up throughout the year, in my opinion. And just kind of so you can get used to it. And I think that's a big piece of it, because a lot of times, we don't start messing with nutrition until midsummer or something for a fall race, and you kind of go all in, and then it's like an overdose versus, something you're just slowly getting used to and getting a good feel for, and letting your body kind of figure out.
Yeah, I think, and I'll start with the first question here, and after I say this real quick, but the big, and you nailed it, was like and I think this is a huge difference in a way, like a lot of athletes think, because of what they see or what they hear. Like a lot of these, like especially on like the pro level, like, yeah, they take in a lot of carbs, but like those carbs for them worked like nitrous oxide, like they're boosters. Like they train so much and it's such a high volume, their fat oxidation rates are through the roof. Yeah. Because they put in not just weeks or months, but years of volume, right? Of volume to get to where they need to be to. So it's just, and that's how you have to look at, in my opinion, like carbs and caffeine are both drugs. Like they can be used very similarly, but so you don't want to depend on it out of the gate. You want to use it as kind of like a booster and not just as gasoline, right? Gasoline, everybody's car runs on gas, right? So you've got it, but you want it to have a more stimulating effect, a more, from a cognitive standpoint, from a performance standpoint. You don't want it just to be what you need to get your car out of the garage. You want it to be what you need to take your car from 80 to 120 while you're drag racing, at a T2. And so it's just some important thing to consider. I think a lot of people don't think about. The first question: what is my hourly calorie and carbohydrate goal for the bike and the run? Again, wildly, yeah, we're not playing the drinking game today. That depends. But it does. It very much depends. And I think, if memory serves, like these were all Ironman questions. So these weren't like sprint and Olympic questions. Obviously, like that's going to be a little bit different from on an Ironman. Like, and I'll kind of branch 70.3 Ironmans into the same thing. Like the biggest thing I want athletes to look at, and even look at myself, is like from a calorie consumption standpoint and a carbohydrate goal, you also need to look at like how high of a work rate you're putting in. And so if you're at a really, really high work rate, for a lot of people, you're not going to be able to take in as many calories, right? Because you're going to need blood, towards your stomach to digest. Like, I think that's something that we oftentimes like forget, is that it takes energy, right? And blood needs to come to the digestive system in order to be able to digest the amount of calories you're putting in. So when you work at a very, very high work rate, like you're in zone 3, maybe zone 4, and a lot of people race at zone 3 for a full, to the latter part of it, or definitely for a half, it's harder to digest, right? And you think, oh, I need like more. And yes, you need some, like, but it's more about like when you time it, but you also have to understand that like you have to be able to not have any GI distress. Because I honestly imagine, I would say GI distress is probably the leading, if not right there up there with the leading cause for DNFs at the full distance. Throwing up, GI issues,
Yeah.
and it might not be, and if it's not the number one factor, I think it is like a contributing factor to the reason, right? So like GI, they might just be like, I can't go any further. I can't stop using the restroom. My stomach's, I'm throwing up. Like that's like number one, right? But then you also have like dehydration and like all these different other things that could also be like a symptom or excuse me, a result of bad GI distress. Like I can't move my legs. Like I'm not peeing. Like I'm like, yes, same thing, right? So like we can make all these mistakes, but it's very, very different. It goes from work rate. It also goes from like length of time. Like you plan on being on your bike for 4.5 hours. You plan on being up for 8, right? Like, in what kind of system are you utilizing here? If the goal for you is to just take it like zone 2, low zone 2, high zone 1 for an Ironman bike, you don't need as many.
Yeah.
Like you're going to be over consuming. And honestly, that's over 60% of the field. That's it. It's over. And so you think about, if I'm just going out for a leisurely ride, why in the world would I be taking in like way more than I'm actually burning? Like there's no way in an hour, like, oh, I need to save it, for the run. But like you're going to have so much shit in your stomach fermenting because you're not burning through it. Then you wonder why you're having all this GI distress. And yes, you need to replenish those glycogen stores from the swim. But again, your goal for the bike in the run is also very dependent, like how long you're going to be swimming for. I know we talked about this last week, but like if you're an hour and 50 minute swimmer, you're going to probably need to take in the first hour to hour and a half of your bike because you just spent an hour and 50 minutes using energy. Yes, you probably woke up, but you woke up in maybe not a fasted state because you may have had like a giant pasta dinner, but you had some gels and a breakfast that morning, but you're probably in the negative. And so, yeah, you need to top off a little bit, but that's versus a person who gets out in 55, right? You probably haven't even like dipped in the stores you built up from the night before in the morning, right? And so I think like you have to experiment. In my opinion, yes. Like, can you work over 100 in? Absolutely. I mean, people are working like 120, 130, 140, 200. And everybody uses Cam Wurf's like 200 grams an hour as like this like bragging right thing. They did the Ironman in Texas last year, and they ended up like walking the most of the run with GI distress. So it's like, okay, how is that? It's like, hey, you can't, there's no such thing as a great bike followed by a poor run. I tend to think anywhere between 70 to 90, 95% of people can get by, not just get by, but thrive with. It's not too much. It's not too little. I tend to think 90 is still on the the higher end of things. But it is enough. And, for the bike, I think that is enough. Yes, you want to have a little bit of extra on the bike because it's a lot harder to take in calories, for the run. It also goes down to like, are you $120 soaking wet or are you 280?
Yeah.
Like all these things are just things, again, like we don't think about. And I think another important factor, I know we've talked about this a lot over the last year and a half is, what do you feel like personally, right? Not performance, or what someone else is telling you or certain calculations. I know I'm huge fan, still am a fan of like the Saturday app, but I remember making like a few of my drinks based on recommendations I wanted. And that was like, I felt a little nauseated, like the amount of like tablespoons of sugar I was tossing into my drink. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm not sure this is super ideal for me. Could be wrong, could be right. But I'm like, I'm not sure this is like the role I want to go down. And so, I think you also have to think about like what kind of journey are you trying to go on with your, in endurance sports, with triathlon, with Ironman, with 70.3, whatever it is. And like, if it feels good to you, then do it, regardless of what all the other noise is, whether it's no carb and low carb, whether it's 150 grams, whether it's the constant marketing from the feed or people telling you that you got to go this, and it's like what makes you feel good. It's completely different for everyone. And I think it's also personal preference. It's like you have to know these things. Like I've worn CGMs in the past to kind of track like, what causes spikes, what does cause it. Like I encourage everyone to experiment with these things because it's so, 50 to 60 Graham, I think honestly more than half the field could do really, really well off that if they train in a way that improves your fat oxidation. Maybe if you're doing like a 2.5, 3 hour ride, like spend the first half hour just taking in water, right? Boost that rate up and then take some in, right? And when you're 2 or 3 weeks out, practice some more race day nutrition. And I used to use this phrase, and I hate the phrase gut training. I'm like it's what it's telling me is like, why am I trying to force something in my gut that it's not going to want? If you went out to eat one night, every time you went out to eat, you got some food and it made you sick to your stomach and like diarrhea, gas, bloating, want to throw up, you would be like, really liked it. I just got to train my gut. So I think I'm going to have that food every day for the next 2 weeks. That'll train my gut. No, you wouldn't. You'd be like, I'm never doing that again.
Yeah.
But with carbohydrates and sugar and gels, you're like, you got to train your gut. And then on the run part, like, and I'll shut up, but the run is even more so. Like because again, the higher rate of speed you are, the less calories you can take in. You're moving, so you get all that water, all that fluid jostling around in your stomach. You're not gonna take in a lot on the run. So yes, you do want to have some buildup, but again, the caffeine, the sugar, the carbs, those need to be used as like rocket fuel, not as just like regular gas get you out of the driveway. And that's when you need it the most. But yeah, it's wildly dependent. And I think the biggest area of kind of like self-research every athlete should do.
Yeah, I love that about the restaurant thing. But, that to me points to, okay, if you can't eat that food or whatever, something's good. Something else could be off too. You know what I mean? Like there's some imbalances or whatever, or you're eating at a restaurant that puts a bunch of crap in and that your guts just can't handle it. So when you talk about racing and you talk about how it's just, for me, this is the most interesting thing because I probably typically overbike and I'm always out there looking for energy and but I often realize that I'm just not quite in maybe as good enough shape as I should be on that bike course. You know what I mean? And then I find myself trying to dig out of it with little extra rocket fuel, like you're saying. And it kind of creates that sort of up and down thing and that spike. And then that sort of carries over into the run. And I feel like usually I'm in, decent enough shape, but I find it just amazing sometimes when I get on that run that I'll just be maybe just craving water, and I'm like, okay, did I just underhydrate my situation? Not just today, but like 3 or 4 days in a row or whatever the case may be. And especially at the pace I'm usually running, like you're saying, it's like, do you really need to just gel it up all the time? Is that going to be the answer? I don't know, because that's why it makes me wonder about 70.3s, because you are going harder. And if you're looking for that rocket fuel, that fueling could come into play a little bit differently too. I think I'm just always amazed at how really often I run Ironman marathons without a ton of fuel, and maybe it's like you're, usually do. And I'll go to the Coke and it's like, just a little half cup of Coke or something here and there. And I usually can get through it, but it's usually my endurance in general that probably gives out most of the time, or there's my ability to deal with pain and things of that nature. But yeah, it's, I really, cause even last year it was sort of like at the end of that marathon, I kind of found something, and like, it wasn't because I was just doing awesome fueling out there. I just got towards the end. I was like, okay, it's time to run now. And I wasn't going fast, but I just figured out how to suck it up. Maybe it's just the fact that, it's almost over. These are the things that are just so interesting. And I think it's so important to kind of break down your race into chunks that you can handle and not be overwhelmed by it. Because if you get off the bike and you're feeling like, oh my God, I got a marathon, I'm tired, and you're thinking about the whole marathon the whole day, you're probably going to have a tendency to start just putting too much in right away and, getting aggressive with nutrition and fueling on the run, when I don't know, like it depends on how fast you're going. Like you said, if you're really doing it, are you really in more of a zone, high zone 1, low zone 2 out there, you shouldn't need just tons and tons of stuff. And that's going to go right to your gut. And, I've had some of those, I've been, over the times I haven't really had any gut issues. And sometimes I think it's because, man, I'm like, I don't know if I need this right now as much as I just need a little more fluid. And or just water or something. I don't know, man. I'm talking to my ass. This is like, all I can talk about a lot of times is what I know. And
I think more people should go about it that way.
Yeah.
Like I don't think you're talking from like a personal experience, which I think everyone should do. And
yeah, well, I mean, again, it's sort of like, I know, like I said, man, if I'm in good shape, I can go out and run, you know, probably like a run camp. I'm in decent shape. We ran for 2 hours. I don't even know if I think I had one bottle, like a scoop of Scratch for 2 hours, you know, and felt fine. I mean, it wasn't my fastest day of all times or anything like that, but I felt fine afterwards. And, you know, I just think it's kind of amazing what we can do. And there's just a tendency. I've just seen so many people that I know aren't really trained as well, you know, because of inconsistencies and not really being focused on training for the race. And they go out and they have a bad marathon and my nutrition, I really screwed it up. I'm like, dude, you didn't even train.
Yeah, that's right.
You know,
it's always the feeling in the run, man. Like they always take the brunt of it. And I love what you said, because like, I also think distance is less relevant than training, fitness, and rate of speed. It's like, I'm going to sit up there, I got to take it more. Well, yeah, but like, how different is your pace going to be? Like, just because the shorter distance doesn't mean, you know, this drastically different approach. Like, it's all still very, very dependent on your current level of fitness. Like, the last time I was doing a bunch of 7.3s, like I was going 80-85% of the bike because I was in that good a shape.
Yeah.
Like next weekend in Dallas, I'll be doing like zone 2 because that's all I got these days. That's all I got right now. So I'm not going to be trying to take in as much because I'm not going to be working at such a high work rate. Just because the distance is shorter, it's still relative to like your ability and your speed and the, you know, velocity in which you're trying to move across, you know, the bike course and move across the run course. And, you know, as you were saying a few things, and like, I want to kind of piggyback this between like the next question, which is, how much sodium or electrolyte intake is necessary per hour and how should I carry it? Well, I recommend carrying a bottle. But this is the most, like, to me, this is the widest varying question. It's like, I even thought, it's like, this isn't directly related, but it is. Like, I went into Hayden's hockey locker room last night to get him to hurry up because he takes like fucking forever in there talking to everybody. And I walked in and like half the kids dripping sweat, faces red. And then this other one kid's walking out, and I swear he looked like his hair just stepped out of like a legit like salon photo shoot. Not a drip of water on him. Not sweaty, face wasn't red, hair was perfect. I mean, dialed in. Like, he didn't sweat at all. And like, we all know this, but some people, like, you can walk the mailbox in June and you're just like dripping. Other people, like, they legit don't sweat. That's just, it is so different, each person. So like, I can't even begin to tell you what that would be. And like, and neither can Chat GPT. Like, hopefully it tells you to like go like get that testing. To me, like, water and fluid loss, like, that's the easiest thing you can measure. You don't need to go to a lab, period. You just simply weigh yourself before you ride, and the bottles of fueling, right? So if you're gonna do like a 1 hour, you know, whatever sweat test, you know, and you're going to take in 2 bottles of nutrition, then, and like maybe even you put like 2 gels in there because that's just the way you roll. Well, you hop on a scale carrying, you know, holding the 2 bottles and 2 gels in your hand. Let's say that weighs like 200. Well, then you do this test. And then when you get off the bike, you take those 2 bottles and 2 gels, or the wrappers and the empty bottle, whatever it is, same setup, and you weigh yourself again. Right. And then you see how much fluid loss. And if you're dropped down to like 194, then yes, we need more water and electrolytes. If you didn't lose that much, then maybe it's on point. Right. I think that is, you know, one of the, like, the biggest, like, the easiest thing to do is just measuring that loss. But I wanted to touch real quick on like the carbohydrate calorie intake for me. And like, I always think that, like, you know, like I said, carbohydrates and caffeine should be used as like rocket fuel. But a lot of times when I see, like, when people are dragging, you know, like when you're feeling really, really good and you're on point and you are like, you wake up, you got plenty of rest, like, even if you're not doing performance, like, some caffeine does feel like a drug boost. But when you are lacking on sleep, caffeine has less of an impact.
Yep.
Right. I think it's really interesting. Right. And same thing, like when you're feeling run down, you're feeling crappy, like you're not like, oh, dude, I really am craving like a grilled chicken spinach salad. No, you're like, man, I really want something sugary. Right. And that sugar might have like an immediate like minute to 5 minute impact, but then you're going to fucking crash and you're going to like barely keeping your eyes open. So I just think I just want to point that out. And like when you're feeling good and you're appropriately rested, or your stress levels and your energy output is appropriately measured to the energy that you have from sleep and recovery and all these different things, like that is when carbohydrates and caffeine can be used as like a drug boost, right? It is a performance booster. If you are not feeling well and you are overpaced, right? Either from, you're under recover from lack of sleep, too much stress, or you overswam, you overdid the swim, you overdid, like, those things are not going to have the same impact. Like a fresh person on caffeine you feel like you're on like, you are ready to go. But if you're lacking on like sleep and you do caffeine, it almost has zero effect on you. Like, and I think, and same thing with like carbs, like you get that quick sugar, you get that quick fix, and then you actually feel worse. And so I just think it's something I wanted to touch on that, because I think so many people think it's like a savior. And just like you pointed out about like the fitness piece, it was perfectly stated, like the fitness piece, you can't just ignore that. Like you have to marry them together, right? And stop blaming on one of the two. They all coincide. And like, yes, you can ruin one thing or the other, but you can also overemphasize and put too much weight behind what caffeine or extra carbs can do for lack of fitness, lack of sleep, lack of recovery. Like your body, like, yes, it can use as a booster, but it's not going to replace, right, fitness. It is not going to replace rest.
I think that is just such a great point. And it reminded me of one of the Chattanooga races I did, I literally had no sleep. I think maybe 30, I don't know. It was just one of those nights, and hopefully I've kind of remedied that in the recent days. But I got up and I hit the caffeine, like I remember like just being so tired. Like, I can't believe I have to do an Ironman on this situation. And I've done a lot based on little sleep, but this is just one of the worst for some. Could have been several days leading up and all these kind of things. But I started hitting the caffeine gels out on the bike. Dude, I was so tired all day. I was literally kind of falling asleep on the run. I was just that tired. I would really have hated to see my numbers, but I just think that's a really good point in retrospect, because I've thought about that day a lot. And I probably should have just got up and just chugged water, just no caffeine as long as I could have resisted, because I bet my body would have turned around better than spiking it right out of the gate and then just being on a roller coaster all day. Because I just think that's a really good point, man. You feel good. It's kind of like after a run, you go for a coffee, you're just like, man, you on top of the world, some days. Yes. It's versus I'm struggling. It's like I used to kind of do that. No coffee in the morning of race day, and I started going away from it. Maybe I started with a little, and then maybe a little bit more, and it was just a cheap way to get ready. When I thought, well, my theory was always, once I hit that water, I'm gonna wake up. So I just need to be hydrated, not jacked up on caffeine when I get in there, because the water will just wake me up naturally, over time. And so I think that right there is one of those little things that really need to be thought about.
Yeah, I mean, I've never had caffeine or coffee in the morning after like no sleep and been like, oh, dude, game changer.
Yeah, I'm back.
I feel like
it's just like you take a nap in 15 minutes.
Exactly. Like, I don't know if it's like resent the cup that I had, or I'm like, because the thing is, then you're like, well, that wasn't strong enough. I need another one. But you're like, no, I'm probably better off taking like a brisk walk and like chugging like 2 glasses of water.
Yeah.
Right. It's just interesting, right? Like,
all you get is that brittle feeling like a couple hours later,
Yes. Like you can feel yourself feeling like acidic. Like I can, like when I've had too much coffee and I'm like, yes, that was a mistake, right? Like a bunch of water, maybe some electrolytes, like an element or something like that. Like then you're pretty good. So next up, what are common race day nutrition mistakes and how to avoid them? Well, the biggest way to avoid them, don't do them. But no, like in all seriousness, like most common race day mistakes for me are, I think people say race day nutrition mistakes. I think you should talk about like the 48 hours leading into it, because I think a lot of people underestimate the impact of that. Like the amount of food some people take in, and hey, listen, raise his hand, been there. Like the amount of food and carbohydrates some people will take in like the days leading up to it that they don't normally take in is astronomical. Like I do not believe in the pre-night pasta dinner. I don't know that I believe in the preload period. And I'll probably get some flack from that, probably from sportsmanship. I don't know that I believe in it anymore for 90% of athletes. I believe if you eat normally that week, the same that you've always been, and you've gone from, just an example, right? If you've gone from 3 weeks out, you've gone from 16 hours down to 12 hours down to 8 hours. Well, and a lot of people will argue that, going back to like the hourly calorie and carbohydrate goals, that, you're working on fat oxidation and in a glycogen depleted state based on your training volume. You go out and you do like like for me, like I got this morning, I had a little bit of a snack, like a small breakfast, and I got on the bike and did like an hour on the trainer at like VO2. So I replenished, but I'm still more than likely, like, because of if you're sleeping last night, like I'm still at a glycogen depleted state. I don't need to focus on being even more glycogen depleted, like for a session later today. I already am. So I'm already kind of boosting that fat oxidation. You don't have to work on it. The point being is that your glycogen stores will naturally be topped off if you just eat normally and train less with less intensity. Because the same way you've been eating, you're going to train less. Those stores are going to slowly rise from maybe like constantly like 70, 80% to 95, 100. What happens is if you overdo it, then you're setting yourself up for failure the next day. And that's something I got away from. I know the last like 3 to 4 years using like a preload plan. And I honestly think it's affected me. So I'm not doing it again. And so I think like people started off then that make like these big, again, poor choices and like going away from what they feel like works and like just eating just enormous amounts of food. I would definitely stay away from veggies and like high fiber. Like, and people say like stay away from fat. I'm like, hey, Michael Jordan had a steak every night before a race, so like it can't be that bad for you. But on like the race day nutrition, like I think the biggest thing, the one thing I do believe in, general rule of thumb, is the lower the intensity, the closer you can have your last like big meal / snack before the gun goes off. If you're doing a full Ironman, you're going to be going at a pretty easy work rate. You can probably get away from like 2 hours, 90 minutes before the start. But then the quicker you're going to go, 7.3 down Olympic down sprint, the further that needs to get away. Right? You need tons of time to digest that food. Plus, it also needs to be a little bit smaller, right? Because you're not going to need that much of it, because you're not going to be going for as long. But yeah, I mean, I think like another thing that I think I kind of got away from encouraging was, I'm a firm believer like that first, like take a gel coming out of the water, like immediately, like just take a gel, T1, slam it, and you're already 100 calories ahead of the game. Right? 100 calories or 100, might take you 45, 50 minutes on the bike. Plus like those first, like 25 to 30, everybody's a touch squirrely. It's like the last thing you want to do is like worry about getting up in your bottles. You're weaving in and out of people. I'm trying to think about just like, the Wisconsin course, you like coming down the helix and you got like the bike path, like ain't nobody taking in calories, right? Because it's so sketchy that I can't see a lot of people like, yeah, I got to really focus on getting my calories and hydration in, and it depending on how much you took in before, like slam that gel in T1, top off the stores from the swim if you need it. And then the first bottle for a lot of people, I think should be plain water. I really do. I think you need a good base in your stomach with some fluid before you start shoving like high concentrated drinks and gels into your stomach because it's probably already empty. You sweat, you probably peed 3 times, you probably pooped twice before you got in the water. You're probably pretty empty. Like give yourself a good base of fluid for things to absorb through and not just like hit the stomach acid like out of the gate, like with straight carbs and sugar. Like I don't know that that's the best recipe. And then I think you brought this up earlier. You know, the one of the most common race day nutrition mistakes I see is not people being not willing to deviate from their plan. Like if you feel like you're too bloated, stop taking in calories. Right? Just because you're supposed to take a sip every 20 minutes or whatever, slow it down. Like that's why I'm a huge proponent of like always having one bottle on board that's just water. Because if you don't, and you start to feel bloated or start to feel some GI stress, you don't have a bottle to just use for water. You're just be adding to the problem with your calories.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important the race day nutrition plan is no different than the pacing and power strategy. Like have a general guideline, but be willing to deviate, right? Same goes for if you start to feel a little extra fatigued, right? Or you feel like we all kind of get that like, low sugar feeling. If you feel like you're behind, then don't catch up immediately. Just slowly, maybe try to add a little bit in, but you got to be willing to deviate a little bit based on, again, the signals that your body is telling you. That's why I think it's so important in training, right? Like, that was the next question. I'm trying to pair it here so we don't go over, but it's how do I effectively practice my race day nutrition long sessions is like, before I practice them, I do long training sessions based off feel and what I feel like I need nutrition wise. I just do. Because I think if you don't listen to your body's signals, hey, I feel like I need more water. Hey, I feel like I need more salt. Hey, I probably do need some more carbohydrates. Then because you're always slamming them in, you just know what's too much. Then you're not going to know just like in pacing, right? Knowing effort and what your body's telling you, listening to your breath, listening to your foot is the ground. Like all these things, like if you don't feel those things out and understand kind of like what these certain alarm bells look like, what do they feel like, what do they seem, and then how to remedy them, then come race day, you're going to have no idea how to troubleshoot. And so I always say, like, just feel it out first. Like make some mistakes 6, 8, 9 weeks out by just feeling out, because then right? And then you can be like, hey, well, I'm more likely to feel like I'm dehydrated. All right, let's add more water. Maybe I'm kind of get a sugar crash. I'm feeling kind of lethargic, or my eyes are getting a little sleepy. All right, maybe it's time to add more carbohydrates and sugar. Like these are all things. Like again, your body is pretty fucking smart. It's like it's amazingly talented, amazingly smart, and so freaking adaptable. It's unreal. Let it tell you what it's got a lot of or doesn't have enough of, and then adjust up and down according to plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. I think back to like that race week, I keep thinking about, you go into a race week, you come into a town and I just think it's really about being consistent with what you're eating, and you get into town, next thing you know, you're going to like 6 different restaurants and all this kind of shit. It's kind of something that I think is maybe a little underrated. I try to, keep it pretty simple and bland, and maybe even bring things that you're used to eating, just so you don't have such a departure from your traditional week of eating. It's one of those things. And as you're talking about, taking a gel out of the swim and then getting on the bike and putting some water in your system, I totally agree with that. I also think it's interesting because, when you get on the bike, there's usually a feeling that you have. You're like, you feel great, or you feel like, oh man, I don't feel it. It's the same thing. You got 112 miles to ride, and you're making a decision in the first 5 minutes how you feel. And I think that can be premature. It's one of those things where, we talk about, like at Wisconsin, for example, is like, we don't really make any decisions till you get all the way through the first loop, into 60, 70, 80 miles or something like that, because you still got 30 or 50 or 40 or 50 left. And if you can kind of like keep it, and I'm not the greatest at this, I'm just telling you, it's not easy to do out there sometimes, but if you can do that, like there's been times when I've gone out, in our camps, which is coming up here this summer if you guys want to sign up, in Wisconsin. But it's, if you kind of like just don't go overboard, and I think this is for most. I mean, if you're going out there to race to the podium, you got to be kind of on the edge of a line, right? We know that. But if you want to just have a really good race, you just kind of like take it in stride through that first, especially that first 20 miles, and don't make like, I just feel completely underfueled, and then you just start pouring it in and then maybe setting yourself up. I think it's really worth getting that water base, like you're saying, in you, and then sort of letting it flush itself out and getting into a place where you can kind of really make a better decision about how you think you're going to have to fuel. I mean, I think your body it takes time for the body to wake up on all this stuff. I mean, you get off the bike and you get in that run, and boy, sometimes you just want to, cash in the chips right away. But after a while, it seems to open. It's a patience game a little bit at the beginning of this stuff. And I think if you're it's almost an irrational decision sometimes if you're really trying to decide how you feel within a few miles of getting on the bike. It's just kind of, you got to let that stuff settle in, and then, you've done the training. It shouldn't be that hard to ride 15 miles and then kind of make another decision at that point when you're a little awake. Your legs are awake and you're like, okay, yeah, maybe I do feel a little bit off or whatever. I don't know. But I just think it's, because we've talked about it, and a lot of people will just say, you really need to get your shit in right away after the swim. But I think it probably should be a little bit more of a grazing kind of a situation,
Yeah. And I think, again, like going back to, I know I'm beating a dead horse here as we close out today, but like, this is why the swim is so important. Mm. Like, I don't think people, I think people like greatly underestimate the energy and calorie burn rate during the swim. Like, it's enormous. Like, since we were like joking on this, like this list from Chat GPT, I put in while you were talking, like, if I swam zone 3 for 2.4 miles and it took me 90 minutes, what would my calorie expenditure be? And I gave it like all my met 6 foot, 183, the current fitness level. It said anywhere between 1,000 to 1,300 kilocalories. Yeah. In just the swim.
I know that's normally swim to the breakfast buffet and just plow it all down.
I know, right? And like, or it's close. It's probably close to like 60 to 80 carbs like for just hours. So probably 90 when you're done. Like, I know it's, again, like I know we talked about and said like, yeah, the distance is irrelevant. It's the rate of speed and energy in zone you're going to be participating in. Like, people hear Ironman, I'm like, yeah, I'll be taking it, like it's just Ironman swim, we're going easier. But like, if you're still zone 3 in it because you're undertrained, you're so behind the 8 ball, you're going to have to go so slow in order to adequately catch up, because you can't catch up and go fast. Because the point I made, like in question 1 and 2, like the higher rate of energy you're expending, the more blood going to your legs because of the power output or the pace, the less opportunity you have to digest the high caloric need you need to make up for the amount of time, the amount of energy burnt and calories burnt during the swim. Like I know everyone makes a huge deal about the bike and the run, calories. It's only because you can't take in calories during the swim. I mean, you can, like some people took a gel in and like to come out of the water, like Ironman Florida's 2 laps, you can tuck a gel in, your wetsuit, and then pull it out and take a gel. And they've got water cups out of lap 1. Like, you can do that, and it's not a bad idea. But I mean, like, man, like the amount of, I mean, think about it. Like, if you're a swimmer that's out there for an hour and 50 for an Ironman swim, half the time, I mean, if we're being honest, probably fighting for your life, lots of contact, just trying to make the cutoff, you're probably looking at 1,500 calories burnt. And you hadn't even started the race. I mean, even if you rode the bike for 7 hours and took in 200 carbs and calories an hour, you're still in the negative. Like, it's just, I can't, like I know, like we always tend to think about each discipline separately and fueling on the bike and the run and just like how it is in training and in practice, but like it's all connected. The calorie and the energy demands and the carbohydrate demands are from the time you set foot in the water till you finish the run. It's just like where you, like if it's like a, a wave, right? On a graph, it's like where you want the majority of that consumption to be. Like if you had like, point A is when you get in the water, and then Z is the finish line, and it's like kind of like a wave looking, graph. Like where do you want to see the peak of consumption in that graph? Like what letter is it going to be? F is no, probably not. Is it going to be like L, M, like probably around there, right? Probably like mid to half, to like mid to almost done with the bike. Like so you got to think about, all right, well, if I only max out then, and I need this much, like how do I try? I mean, obviously you're never going to replenish as much as you burn. You just can't. It's not possible. But the best you can do is like see how long you can fend off that feeling of being in the negative, right? Same thing is like you want the calories and the caffeine and the carbs to feel like a boost, not like, you're treading water. And so again, like I know it's like, oh, I really wish you guys would have given us like a perfect calculation for all these different things. Like there's just not one. I firmly don't believe there is one. I think there's some apps out there that do a pretty decent job of formulating and calculating and giving you your needs. But I mean, nothing like listen to your body, like going back to the restaurant analogy, like if it doesn't sit, it doesn't sit. Right. Like, again, I don't understand the training the gut thing. Like, it's usually it's telling you I've got plenty of this, but what I need is something different. Like I like the chicken. I just didn't like the sauce. Okay. Well, chicken didn't bad for me. It was a sauce on top. So maybe let's just do more chicken again, a little bit less sauce. Right. So maybe I need more water and less carbs or vice versa. Right. Just you got to experiment. You got to listen to your body. But the thing is, you got to take the time to experiment and then track that we can go back and learn from yourself and like the signals that your body is telling you.
I'm with that.
Yeah, I know you are. It's just, it's like, I do. It's like, and I think like it's a huge mystery because I think people's bodies changes, their demands change. And it's like, you can't just stick to the same plane you've had for forever. And I think that's something that we get into trouble with. Right. But yeah, I mean,
it's a daily practice.
It is.
If you think about 100%. It, I mean, your hydration and nutrition, I mean, it's a daily, I just think if you can get it down in your daily life, you probably won't have as much problem on a race because, you know what I mean? Because it's not that big of a variation.
Yeah. No, that's pretty well said. I mean, yeah, if you're consistent and diligent, yeah, then your body's pretty well tuned, right? And you're pretty well in tune with your body. Two things I think are challenging for a lot of people. But yeah, hope you enjoyed that. We'll have a less structured podcast for you on Thursday. But yeah, a lot to take in there, I'm sure. And again, I'm sure we didn't provide like the exact answer, but there is none. Some of you might thrive on 40, some of you might thrive on 140. It's just very, very dependent. But at least we hopefully provided you with a lot of context, things to think through in terms of what's important to think through when you do navigate, trying to make your own plan, from personal experience, maybe even using a platform or a calculation. Like, again, these are all estimates, right? The only true kind of test is, going through it and trying out yourself on your long rides and your runs or heading to the pool and doing a super hard swim, going home immediately and hop on the bike at race pace. The old swim bike brick no one talks about. Like, people all about got to test my nutrition out bike to run. I'm like, yeah, well, why not test out the other way around? But no one wants to add in extra swimming. I get it. You're probably tired of hearing about it. Hopefully not tired of hearing about our camps. We had a lot of signups this last week for our Wisconsin camp. I think we got 3 more spots left for that. Got our Nashville camp too. It's got some more traction. That's into May. Check those out. They're on our website. Would love to have you. And as always, we love you guys. We really do appreciate you. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It is the one-stop shop we have for coaching, camps, and community. If you need anything from Mike, he is always available, Mike at c26triathlon.com, or if you need anything from me directly, Robbie at c26triathlon.com.
Yeah. And congrats to our athletes who get to choose from a beautiful new kit design this year.
Yes, got a new
coming
kit
out
design.
Friday.
Yeah, coming out Friday, new kit design. Not too much of a deviation from the last 2 years, because that was a big fan favorite and is it ever easy to see us on course. But yeah, new design coming. Excited to release that, and the team store, which is awesome. A lot of black in there, which I'm a huge fan of. But yeah, excited to do that, and excited to come back and do this again on Thursday.
Okay, that'll wrap it up.
Wrap it up, man. All right, dude. Have a good rest of the week. I'll see you Thursday.
All right, man. You too. See you.